What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are celebrating midsummer, as it is currently midsummer in the Northern Hemisphere, and in Wicca and pagan sort of communities, the midsummer is known as Litha. So we are going to be looking at the ceremonies, the traditions, the food, etc. that is generally brought out and practiced during this festival. If I'm not mistaken, does that mean that's we're at a solstice? I'm pretty sure the solstice was the 21st, so like 2 days ago. Anyway, so as always, we're on Learn Religions, and that link will be in the description down below. I'm just going to be going off of what's on that particular page, but that particular page has links to the things if you want to have a look at them more in depth, if one or more of them sound enticing to you. So the page starts off: gardens are blooming and summer is in full swing. Fire up the barbecue, turn on the sprinkler, and enjoy the celebrations of midsummer, also called Litha. This summer solstice Sabbat honors the longest day of the year. Take advantage of the extra hours of daylight and spend as much time as you can outdoors. Now, it is also worth noting that at the moment, we're technically in the southern hemisphere. We're in the middle of winter, so we have actually just celebrated Yule, which is in the northern hemisphere the festival that Christmas was based on. Considering we're almost in July, it makes a little bit of sense that Christmas in July would be a thing. But it's always sort of confused me because it is in fact June. That's 6 months, sort of the opposite of December. Anyway, so our first little section is rituals and ceremonies. So depending on your individual spiritual path, there are many different ways you can celebrate Litha, but the focus is nearly always on celebrating the power of the sun. It is very much a sun festival, it's very much a fire festival, because this is the time of year when crops are growing and the earth is at its warmest, really, because you've had your 3 months leading up to this date. You're gonna have 3 months where it starts to get cooler, so really it's the hottest day of the year if you look at it like that. Obviously meteorology has something else to say about that. We're ignoring her for a second. But because of that, you get to spend the long sunny afternoons enjoying the outdoors and getting back to nature after the long daylight hours. Sorry, under the long daylight hours. It also does mean that your evening barbecues and stuff can go a little bit later, and you can enjoy those cool summer afternoons and cool summer evenings, which are always just, when paired with a delicious barbecue and just the right amount of friends and alcohol. You can't have too much of a good thing with both of those, despite what some of my friends would like to think. So within this section, there are a few rituals that you may want to think about trying, but it is worth remembering that any of them can be adopted and sort of changed and whatnot for solo practitioners and groups of people. So whether you are a solitary practitioner or part of a small coven, you can sort of adjust these ceremonies depending on your situation. I think another important one as well, some of these can be adjusted depending on your level of sort of the available finances you have for some of these things. For instance, if you want to go out and buy a bunch of firewood, obviously that's going to be something you're going to have to keep in mind if you're wanting to have a bonfire as part of your celebration. It's not necessary, although as we will find out in a second, a fire ritual is one of the big things for this festival. So before you get started with the rituals, you need to think about preparing your altar for Litha, and there is a link within that for actually finding out what a Litha altar will look like. From memory, it's predominantly looking at the element of fire. So predominantly the color red, and then things like incense, candles, I think triangles are symbolic of fire as far as shapes are concerned. Yeah, there's a couple of other things, but I think predominantly it's you wanting it to look like fire. You're wanting it to look like summer on your altar, essentially. So you can hold a Midsummer Night's Fire ritual and celebrate the season with a big bonfire. Essentially, that's it. You set up your bonfire. You cast your circle. You sort of welcome the gods or the spirits, depending on your particular take, to the festival. You light the bonfire and you enjoy some quality times with your friends and family. Just remember to thank the spirits and the gods after the fire has died down, because otherwise, if you don't thank them for coming and for blessing you with their presence, they're gonna get a little bit bitter at you, and you don't want that. Make sure if you do welcome in any sort of spiritual element into it, that you thank them for being there. If you prefer to spend time alone at the summer solstice, there are some simple prayers that you can have as well. You might decide to adopt this as part of, you might use one of your Litha prayers if you've got some Christian friends over. That way you can still have the prayer before the meal so that they don't feel put out, but at the same time, you've also got to remember that if you're worshipping your gods and they're worshipping their god, to simply just use the G word in sort of instead of as a specific name, as more of a title, so that they don't feel put out, because that is one of the major sort of rules. One of the only rules really is that you don't want to. You kind of the whole point of the religion is to just essentially be the best host you can be, and whether that's hosting someone in your house for a festival like this one, or in business practice if you're hosting a client, if you're hosting an event, like a public event, etc, etc. It's just sort of the major rule is basically, if it does no harm to anybody, do as you will. And obviously offending somebody can be harming their sensibilities, and you don't want to be doing that because that would go against the rule. So yeah, there are some prayers there. If you're headed to the beach this summer, take advantage of that. They have a link here for 7 ways to use beach magic. because there is something quite magical about where the land meets the sea. There's also like the sea breeze is usually something. So you've got, you know, that like people enjoy is what I mean there. So you've got earth represented with the sand, you've got water represented with the, well, water. You've got the wind and stuff for air, and then the sun bringing down its heat on the longest day of the year to represent the fire. So you're actually sort of standing at a crossroads of the four major elements. So it's something you want to try and harness if you can. If you've got a little Wiccans and Pagans in your family, you can get them involved as well. There are 5 fun ways to celebrate Litha with kids, as a link there as well. And then finally, if you're not sure how to get started celebrating it, there is a list there of 10 great ways to celebrate. Depending on what happens down here, we might even check that out at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. Alright, so traditions, folklores, and customs. If you're interested in learning about some history behind Litha, here is some of the background. They've got links here for you to learn who the gods and goddesses of summer are, how they're honoured throughout the centuries, and about the magic of stone circles. If I'm not mistaken, the Midsummer Festival is one of the very few times where the way Stonehenge has been built, there's certain holes that line up at certain times of the year. It's essentially a massive sun clock to tell you what season it is. And there are, at like certain times in the morning, you know, with certain sunrises or whatever, because of like the angle of the sun coming through, it actually hits particular holes between the stones and hits like a central circle. I believe Midsummer is one of those, so hence the stone circles coming into it. So there's links there for the history behind the celebrations of the summer solstice, as well as some of the customs and traditions. There's a list of the deities of the summer solstice, as well as the story of the seasonal legend of the battle between the Oak King and the Holly King. Litha is when the Oak King is at his strongest. He will start to wane in his strength, and at I want to say Lammas. Feel like it's Lammas. Let me just double check that actually. Is it Lammas? Wheel of the Year. Let me just double check that. I want to make sure that I'm getting it right. No, at Maybon. At Maybon, at the end of September, the Oak King and the Holly King will be at equal strength again, and then by Yule, the Holly King will be at his peak. It's kind of where holly became a symbol for Christmas, by the way. So yeah, there's also a ton of solar magic myths and legends out there as well. That's a link that you can have a look at, as well as the many cultures that have worshipped the sun as part of religious practice throughout time. In Native American spirituality, there is the sun dance. I've actually got a link for that on that page as well. In ancient Rome, there was Vestalia. And then obviously again the stone circles. It's interesting that the summer solstice is celebrated with Vestalia in ancient Rome, because Vesta is the goddess of the hearth, which is essentially the fireplace of a home, or the hearth, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So yeah, again, with the whole idea of bringing people in to sit them around a fire, which but you would think that in some of these places you wouldn't want a fire in the middle of summer. You would want to be relaxing on the beach, or doing something cooling off, but it is a fire festival. It's also a great time of year to go outdoors and gather your own herbs. If you want to go wild crafting, be sure to do so respectfully and responsibly. There is a link for how to go wild crafting on this page as well. And then last but not least, within this section, if you're looking for some summer reading, be sure to stock up on some of the witchy fiction that they've got on this, linked to this page as well. One of the big ones, hand fasting. Hand fasting season is here. So June is a traditional time for weddings. But if you're pagan or Wiccan, a hand fasting ceremony may be more appropriate. I know friends, or I know people, old friends, who had their hand fasting on the last day of August, which is the last day of winter here in Australia, because they celebrate the wheel of the year in line with the actual seasons, as opposed to me celebrating them in line with my ancestors and when they would have celebrated them in England and Ireland. So they had their hand fasting at the end of winter, and then their wedding was the next year on the 1st of September. Because with the new spring and their new commitment to each other sort of thing, being parallels. There's new life in spring, and so there's new life within their family as a married couple. Very poetic. Very poetic. So yeah, but hand fasting season's here. So they've got links here for the origins of the customs, the different ways you can have a ceremony, selecting a cake, because we're pagan, not Neanderthal. We will still have a wedding cake, as well as some gift ideas that you can slyly suggest to your guests. In a historical context, hand fasting is an old tradition that has seen a resurgence in popularity lately. There's plenty of ways to have a ceremony, and that celebrates your spirituality as part of your special day. You may even want to invite deities of love and marriage. Now, if we're looking at like ancient Greece, for instance, we're looking at Aphrodite and Hera to be part of your ceremony. I believe Frigga would be a Norse one. I believe. I could be completely wrong, but I do believe that would be the case. If you're not sure about how to have a hand fasting, make sure you've got someone who is legally able to perform it. Obviously, if you're getting married, you can, you've just got to have someone who's legally able to officiate. However, if you're doing a hand fasting the way my friends had done it, as sort of a more official sort of, this is our engagement, as of this we are officially engaged. If you're doing it that way, all you need is like an elder or a high priest within your little community in order to officiate that, and then you just get the legal document and sign that, and like have someone legally authorized to witness the signing of that. You can use a basic hand fasting ceremony template. Obviously, those 3 words have an underline for a link as a structure for your ceremony, and you might want to consider a pagan-friendly custom like broom jumping as part of your celebration. So yeah, that's. I don't think my old friends had broom jumping, but it's a fun little sort of stupid thing. If you're looking to just have a whole bunch of fun and celebrate all the joy and happiness of your relationship, go ahead and throw broom jumping in. It's hilarious, as well as actually has some deeper meaning as well. And then obviously, they've got some tips for picking your hand fasting cake. Litha Crafts and Creations, they've got a number of easy craft projects to keep the little ones entertained. You can celebrate the sun's energy with an elemental garden, and there's a way to set up your garden to sort of make the most of the elements. They've got a fiery incense blend and a magic staff to use in ritual. You can make magical items as well, like a set of Olm staves, which are bits of dowel that have Olm words written on them. So you might have words like gra, which is Irish for love, or you might have Anamkara, which is like soulmate. What are some other ones you might put on there? Just trying to think what some of the other words that I know are. Yeah, I can't think of the actual words themselves, but you might want to put things like luck or fortune or I don't know. Go into any of your like little gift stores, find the words that have the rocks that have words written on them, write down a little list, and then you can use those as the basis. All you need is a Google Translate and a little Ohm matrix to let you know what letters equal what, and you can easily just write out your Ohm. It is worth noting that if you hold the dowel upright, you want to start writing from the bottom, and also make sure that the lines that go up sort of the middle of the words themselves, because some of the lines go across both sides, some only go on one side, but make sure that that line ends in triangles that sort of point towards the middle. The idea there is that it's supposed to reflect sort of like the tail end of an arrow, essentially, with the idea of being that you could like write death on one and it would actually be on an arrow. Anyway, you could make some Alton staves for some summer divination. They're really cool as well. It's sort of like drawing straws. What does yours say? And then it's like, well, that's your fortune for this. So making a set of Alm staves could be something you do before your Litha celebration next year, unless you live in the Southern Hemisphere, in which case you've got 6 months until the seasons are right for Litha. And if you want to keep your home decor simple, they've got a blessing besom, I assume that's how you pronounce that word, to hang on your door to welcome your summer guests. And then last but not least, love food. No pagan celebration is complete without a meal to go along with it. For Litha, celebrate with foods that honor fire and energy of the sun, and a tasty batch of midsummer mead. And look, between mead and hand fasting cake, you've got what most ceremonies will have after it anyway, in a similar way to some churches have like a little morning tea afterwards. Most pagan or Wiccan celebrations have a cake and ale afterwards. It's sort of their go-to thing. Instead of salad, sandwiches and coffee, it's cake and mead. So if you want to try and convince that one friend who's just a little too eager on the old grog, let them know that that's part of celebrating pretty much every festival. Okay, so going back to those 10 ways to celebrate quickly, the first one is hosting a bonfire. The second one is getting back to nature. The third one is gonna take some convincing for some people, but get your body moving, whether that's dancing. What have I got here? Why not host a drum circle or spiral dance? What else have they got here? Yeah, no, that's basically it. Drum circle and dancing. Do something for others, give to a food drive or donate to a charity, or it's the longest day of the year. The sun is giving you its fullest blessing on this particular day. Pay that forward to those who might not be able to do that for themselves, and help out in any way you can. Read a good book. Nothing better to do on a summer evening than to just switch off for a second, grab yourself an excellent book, and just while away a few hours just off in a fantasy world. Brilliant. Number 6 is celebrate family. Now look, in Australia, Litha comes at the same time as Christmas, so most people are with their families in Australia for Litha anyway. The Southern Hemisphere's seasons really do sort of, and in the way that the calendar sort of set itself up, it really does help line itself up. So family's already going to be visiting if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. You can already do that. Otherwise, if you're if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you're lucky enough to be able to visit family at the moment, celebrate that, enjoy that. Number 7, clean things up. Most people will do a spring cleaning as part of like Beltane and stuff. Just making sure that the house is still clean. That way you can like open the windows, let the full light of the sun and fresh air come through, help sort of bring that bring the sun's energy into your home more fully. So keeping things clean, and actually there is actually a house cleaning rite that you can do. Hosting a barbecue with friends and family, which again, if you're hosting it with family, you're already going to be celebrating family anyway, but you could do that in another way by like sort of honouring your ancestors as well, whether that's grandma or the original culture that you're descendant from. Number 9 is learn and grow. Now it says here you might like to develop a new skill or take a class in tarot, Reiki, yoga, or anything else that appeals to you. You might decide that now's the time that you're going to get on top of knowing your astrology signs and your star signs and stuff. You might decide that you want to look a little bit more closely into crystals, or it could even just simply be that now's the time that's right for you to start looking at what are you going to study in the next school year. And I know in the Northern Hemisphere the school year starts in September, so now is actually the perfect time to look at that, particularly if you've just finished high school. Is the course that you're going into the one you really want to do, or is it worth deferring and finding a different course or that sort of thing? But learning and growing is a good thing. And then last but not least is honouring the season through ritual and prayer, through your altar, using solar symbols, candles, midsummer fruits and vegetables, all those sorts of things. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. It is one of the major Sabbats because it takes place on an actual observable thing. Like, we can actually measure that it is the longest day of the year, the shortest day of the year, or perfectly 12 hours of each being day and night, as opposed to things like Samhain, which is just simply supposed to be the changing of the seasons. But yeah, no, so that's all I've got for this video. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to ring that notification bell as well if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. Again, link is down below. There's a lot to look at, so if any of it interests you, it is down there. Do go and have a look. And yeah, if you liked this video, please give it a big old thumbs up, and until next time guys, keep your head screwed on.